So, welcome to another Teramind webinar. This time I'm joined by Nick Wheeler, who's the VP of Technology and Product at TimeDoc Health. Nick has over 20 years of experience building and scaling high-performing engineering teams across healthcare, financial services, early stage startups, and has been in senior leadership positions at JP Morgan and USAA. So he really was the perfect person for us to call on when we were looking for people to join a webinar on, AI and enabling it with in sensitive and regulatory environments. So um, before we get into the AI of it all, Nick, do you want to tell us a bit about your role at TimeDoc Health and just kind of get into a little bit of that?
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks for the warm intro. I'm really excited to be about here and talk about AI and security and um, everything that we're going to get into. It's a regulated industry of healthcare. Technology is evolving, the healthcare industry is evolving, and it's really no longer just about the tools that are available to us, because technology is changing rapidly and it's already really impressive what the AI can do. And let's face it, it's getting better every day. Like this is the
Right.
worst AI we'll ever experience. Really the more pressing issue that I think that we're going to get into is, and one we deal with all the time at TimeDoc, is really whether our teams, our partners, and our patients can rely on us to use those tools, right? Do they trust our ability to use those and innovate um, within those constraints of our industry? Like you mentioned, I'm the VP of Product and Technology for TimeZoc. So, I lead both product innovation and engineering execution, line our roadmaps with, compliance, patient safety, and operational scalability. Um, when I joined TimeDoc, which is almost 4 years ago, we were really starting to focus on scaling our company,
Hmm.
getting new partnerships, growing the team, and taking our at that time hybrid work model and evolving it to now we're a fully remote company. But we were also delivering virtual care in a regulated space, right? So
Right.
that meant our product and technology organizations had to really move fast and deliver securely. So my role really was around threading that needle to build those systems to enable our teams to innovate and deliver, uh, but also prevent creating blind spots around security and compliance.
Right.
Uh, it's a little bit of background on what TimeDoc does. We provide virtual care management. We provide those solutions to hospital systems, FQHCs, smaller providers and practitioners across the United States. And we primarily focus on chronic care management, remote patient monitoring, and behavior health. And but have recently begun to expand our portfolio to annual wellness visits,
Right.
health risk assessments. But essentially, what we provide is um, a higher touch than what the doctor's office can provide, right? And what I mean by that is we've got a suite of LPNs, medical assistants that reach out to patients on a regular basis to provide a level of care that the doctor's office simply can't provide.
Right.
Right. So really our largest employee population is are making calls directly to patients.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you've gone from hybrid to fully remote, and is that really what prompted you to kind of explore, a workforce intelligence solution like Teramind? And I mean, you kind of already touched upon like what challenges you were trying to solve, right? You were, regulations and fully remote and all this stuff. Is that kind of what prompted all of that?
Yeah, so the way we got introduced to Teramind is a few years ago. We had someone, a remote person in the company, double dipping, right? And we were completely unaware for the most part. We happened to uncovered this during a screen recording where we saw a competitor's logo
Oh
in
no.
their background in another tab. And so that really prompted us to start thinking, okay, like, what else are we missing out on?
Right.
From a security standpoint as well as just a performance standpoint. And so that's when we started investigating, came upon Teramind to help us out and identify, not just bad actors,
Right.
right? But also what it revealed is that we were completely blind to like how our people were operating on a day-to-day basis, right?
Right.
And so, you know, we could do ride-alongs with our care coordinators to understand like how they operated, but I'm sure we've all heard of like the Hawthorne effect, right? Which is you perform differently when you know you're being observed,
Yeah.
right? So when we would do these ride-alongs, everybody was doing great. They were doing the perfect workflow that we would
Right.
expect. It's when we're not in the room, not looking over their back, where by human nature, they're going to do some things that maybe um, aren't as productive as we would like them to be. I'll
Yeah.
put it that way, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really just it's not trying to find those bad actors. It's trying to find more of like, what are the good folks doing so we can coach the
Right.
folks that are doing some of those things.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that, you know, Teramind is trying to, you know, e- e- refocus people's attention away from surveillance and monitoring and really seeing the true value of what Teramind can offer from that optimization standpoint, from that, visibility standpoint, and really getting all the touch points, not again, not from a big brother, but from a protection standpoint, both, your customers, the organization, and at some points, it's also the employees who are using it as well. You're protecting them as well from any, you know, potential, repercussions or whatever it is. Um,
Yeah,
and
and I would just add on to that, Yehuda, like, we had plenty of like Google Analytics and other analytics within the application
right,
itself that they primarily use. So we know how they're using the platform, but we don't know how they're using the platform. It's like
right,
that
right, right, right,
deeper, a little deeper of like, what are they actually doing and what are the workflows they're bouncing around from?
right.
And I'm sure we'll get into some use cases, but
Yeah, of
like,
course.
one of the quick things that we quickly learned when we first implemented Teramind was just how active people were in Google Chat, right?
Mm,
Which is, a key portion of our business. That's how we communicate. We're all remote, right? How else
right.
do you communicate to folks, right? But our most productive folks were putting Google Chat in the background,
Hmm.
our least productive folks had it top in front of mind, right?
Right.
Front. And so just like making those minor coaching adjustments, like, we saw some improvement with just, recognizing that that was a pattern. And how
Right.
else would we have seen that, right?
Exactly. You can't get Google Analytics for where someone's putting a window on their screen without
100%. Right.
exactly. So, we talked about earlier your experience, expands beyond healthcare, and how in these other regulatory environments like financial services, what similarities did you see in terms of like security and compliance challenges that you're addressing now in healthcare, but you've seen before in financial services?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, both industries are very highly regulated.
Right,
SOC, HIPAA have been around for 30 years at this point, right? The common denominator between the industries is really the data and needing to secure the data, right?
right.
And you know, quick thought exercise for everyone, right? Would you rather have your health information stolen or your financial information stolen? I don't think there's a clear answer there, right? And it probably is pretty personal and, kind of down to, your personal situation, but neither one is good, right?
Right.
So, really it's kind of going back to what I said at the beginning. It's around that trust of, do I trust this bank? Do I trust this doctor's office?
Yeah.
Because that's who you're going to, I'll give your information to and allow you to, provide, get those services from whichever provider.
Yeah.
So, really, that's where the overlap in like kind of the industries in my mind. But it's also interesting, like, JP Morgan Chase, a huge company, right? Been regulated forever. So while I was there, yeah, we had audits like multiple times a year, right?
Wow.
And so
Yeah.
they had it down as a process. It was like they had a whole team and a suite to do that. Where, at TimeDoc, yeah, it's a healthcare company, so different industry, but it's also a small company, right?
Right.
when I first got there, it was very much startup mode and, trying to get out of that startup mode into more maturity. And so it's establishing some of those patterns. So like, how can each other learn, right? How can the healthcare industry learn from the finance
Right.
industry and back and forth? And obviously the overlap is like in the IT departments and like, standardizing on certain cybersecurity measures to ensure that you're protecting things, encrypting
Yeah.
data, etc.
And I'm sure
And a lot.
having a platform like this made it a lot easier to process those audits, right? Here's everything that you need to see is in one place. And yeah,
Yes, absolutely. Right.
yeah,
Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes down to, data and data governance,
right.
right? Smaller companies probably don't have a lot of that, where the larger financial institutions obviously do, larger
Yeah,
healthcare systems probably do, where even smaller fintech companies, they don't have those maturity to have the governance around that. And so establishing that, I think, is pretty
yeah.
important.
Well, I mean, thanks for all this background. But let's get to why people came here for, right? To talk about AI. So, one of the things that, everybody knows, right? AI is exploding. Everybody's trying to use it and add it to their workflow. So within, your experience at TimeDoc, how has AI tool usage evolved, and what trends are you seeing?
Yeah, well, ChatGPT came out in 2022, and like we've seen nothing but an explosion there.
Yeah,
At TimeDoc in particular, just a year ago, we were exploring like how is AI going to disrupt our industry,
right.
right? And fast forward 12 months, we're already seeing it, right? We're all using AI, and just like I'm seeing a proliferation across the employee base of being more comfortable with
Hmm.
the tools, right? So that
Yeah,
one, that's good because it's coming
right,
fast. Um, so we're seeing like people using it in some fashion. But what I keep coming back to when it comes to AI is people are using AI not just because it's the hottest technology right now, but they're really trying to solve a problem,
right.
right? What problem are they trying to solve? Is it, improving their emails,
Right.
right? Is it getting summaries of the meetings that they're attending, right? And um, the industry is going to keep evolving when it comes to AI and the different use cases that are available. But we started about a year ago trying to think of like where is this going to disrupt us and where do we need to start investigating and spending our time and efforts understanding how the market's going to change.
Yeah,
And um, the what is AI good at? It's a tool,
right,
it's a good tool, but also where is it good at and where can we apply that to what we do? But you got to balance that with the security aspect of things,
right.
right? And for a long time and still today, we worry about the black box that AI is and how it learns from the data that we have, right?
Exactly.
So coming back to that trust, like, do we trust these various vendors to not train off our data if we've turned off that switch,
Right.
right? Do we trust them to not store our data if we've asked them not to, right?
Yeah,
To me, it's not like any other vendor that we want to partner with. We got to understand what the relationship is there and hold them accountable for what we need from a,
right.
a security standpoint,
And
right?
in terms of like, like you said, people are getting comfortable with it in your organization, and AI is being integrated everywhere nowadays. So,
Yes,
with that balance of that security, and right, you don't want to just turn it off and say nobody, you can't use it, right? I mean,
correct.
it's making, like you just said, even for summaries of meetings, right? Even the simplest things are now being used with AI. So, especially with like data security and balancing that, how do you go about balancing that with using AI and enabling it with your employees?
Yeah, so first off, it's the simple things. It's having the open conversations with the
Right,
employees around like what are good use cases for different things. It's also like where Teramind really has helped us is identifying how people are using AI,
right,
right? Because again, we're not in a office space where we can go around and observe. right? So Teramind allows us to understand like what are those use cases that people are trying to solve for. So then we can then further explore, is there a better and more secure tool that perhaps we need to offer up to the employees? Because the
Right.
employees at the end of the day, they're just trying to solve a problem. I'm trying to write
Yeah.
a better email, right?
Right. Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
I don't think it two things of it to paste this one little email and say, help me make this friendlier, right?
Right.
Or improve my grammar, right? That's the simple use cases, and we've seen that through Teramind, where
Right.
people aren't just taking their emails and doing that, but they're taking like their chat messages and
Right.
saying, help me write this so
Yeah.
it's a nicer message or cleans up what I'm trying to articulate,
Right.
right? Well, extrapolate that to what we're doing for our patients. Well, now we've got a concern, right?
Right.
Don't want to be taking patient information and putting it into some system that we don't monitor or regulate.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that comes down to educating the employee base of what is acceptable, what's not, right? And then giving them the tools so they can accomplish what they're trying to do, right? Because
Exactly.
if they have a
Yeah.
tool and we have an approach to it, more often than not, they're going to follow that, right?
Exactly. And you
Just
can't
leave it
just
up to,
rely on the once a year compliance training or cybersecurity training,
correct.
whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's not going to cut it. And again, at the end of the day, the employee is like, I'm just trying to make this note better, right? Give me a tool to do so, and I'll follow that, right?
Right.
But don't give me a tool or any guidance, then I'm going to do whatever I think is I need to do, right?
Exactly. So, you know, especially being in that remote organization, how do you continue to educate?
Yeah, well, it makes it difficult being remote,
Yeah.
right? Some of the things that we've tried in various levels of success are, simple like newsletters, right? Just a weekly newsletter with various topics on it. Certainly have done that, but again, like how much are they reading that and absorbing it in their day to day? We talk about it in our all hands meetings, like,
Right.
to make sure that it's top of mind. Yeah, we do the annual security training like we're supposed to educate employees, right? And verify that they've completed that. We do phishing testing, right?
Right.
To, educate them on phishing constraints. But yeah, just um, keeping the knowledge flowing to the
Right.
employee is probably the most important thing you can do. And then understanding like who is struggling to understand what is the right path, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that should just come down to coaching, right? You don't want to punish everybody that strays. Obviously, we got to be protective of PHIs. That's different. But if somebody is using a tool that they shouldn't do, a note from the VP of product and technology saying, "Hey, I wish you wouldn't use that tool. Here's another one to use instead that's more
Yeah.
secure," usually solves it,
Right.
right? Now, I'm lucky enough to be able to do that in our 200 person company. If it was much larger, then you'd have to get different layers of folks to be able to do that,
Yeah.
right? But it's just kind of that just reinforcement. You educate and then reinforce, educate and reinforce.
Yeah. You touched upon before the productivity patterns that you guys discovered. Um, and you just touched upon, notifying on a suspicious behavior that you want to kind of course correct. Um, when you're having this conversation, you're having those education conversations, do you ever kind of worry about the employees feeling like, oh, well, I'm being surveilled, or this is a little too invasive, or are they generally, like you said, receptive to it, um, and they understand it, right? Especially being in this regulatory environment where they know this is sensitive information, or is it they still kind of like how that challenge of communicating, hey, we're watching you,
Yeah, obviously it's a tough balance. Like you
right?
want to be transparent with the employees of, hey, this is a work device. We're going to monitor it. Just like, every call starts with this may be recorded for
Exactly.
quality assurance processes, right? We've got that in our login. So when they log in, they should get that reminder. But yes, nobody wants to think about Big Brother looking
Right.
over their shoulder all the time. I think one way to combat that is to not use it as a hammer, but
Right,
to look for ways for helping the employees, or like I mentioned earlier, looking at what the good performers are doing so you can coach the underperformers, right?
right,
That's a great use case of like monitoring somebody's use, right?
right,
It's also you know getting in there and not using this as like we caught you doing this, right?
exactly.
Right? It's all about like how you present the, like, yeah, how did you uncover this? It's like,
Right,
okay, we're monitoring the platform, right? We noticed that you went to this website that's not approved. Again, here's an alternative that you can go to. I got a notification from our security platform. Usually that's enough to for them to think, oh, okay, yeah, I'm being monitored, but it's not like I'm watching everybody's screen all the time, right?
right.
Yeah. I got a
And most
notification from the security platform.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
most employees, we, have to sign, they know that there's some form of monitoring on their devices, especially of, work devices, whether you're remote, hybrid, or in person, there
Yes.
is that there should be that understanding, or that, I'm using a work device, not a personal device. There is going to be some sort of monitoring involved, and once I think, like you're saying, it's delivered in a transparent way, uh, sharing the positive aspects, you know, it's going to be much more better received by the employees. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
And just to give you another example of something that we learned from Teramind as we were trying to look at higher performers versus lower
Hmm.
performers was, not just the Google Chat was up front and center, but also what amazed us was the layout of their monitors.
Right,
Right? High performers had a good workflow where they went from left to right, where underperformers, had them stacked, right? They were doing this all the time. That seems like such a minor thing, right? But being able to go out and say, hey, we've done some research with the
right,
tools we have. If you set up your platform this way, right? We've seen that it improves productivity.
right.
Now, again, we're not going to go monitor and like people that are stacked. We're not going to go say, hey, go change your monitor layout. But providing them that information so then they can best choose, right? And it's
Right.
also, a gentle reminder that, yeah, we are paying attention to how the platform and how the applications are being used and what you do on a day-to-day
Yeah.
basis, right? But trying to make it a positive light of, this is a good thing that we found that might
Right.
help you.
I mean, again, you give that example, and we talked about it in our prep call, but like even in my few months since joining Teramind, I've seen certain changes that I've made to my screen configuration have helped me become more productive. Whether it's seeing, a timer and saying, okay, hey, it's been an hour since I've gotten up and moved my body or whatever it would be, or taken a 5 minute break, even just knowing where that timer is or where that counter is has helped me, from moving from the left side to the right side, where my Slack is, versus it's being on the left side. It, there's so much more to, what Teramind is as a platform than, that surveillance or monitoring. And I'm so happy that you're bringing these like use cases up, forward, because hearing from a customer who is having such a great experience is so worth it for us. Um, and when it comes to communicating that, and communicating your a productivity challenge or a productivity change or something, is it something that you're delivering, or is it something that you're delivering it to the manager of a team, or directly, and they're sharing that down?
Yeah, it depends, honestly, right?
Yeah.
Like everything. Like if it's a security thing, then it needs to come from me,
Hmm.
right? And if it's a productivity thing, then that's best delivered by the ops team and the
Hmm.
ops managers that are working that,
Yeah.
right? You don't want the security officer pinging you about an operational, performance improvement. Same as like you don't want the head of ops talking to you about a security thing,
Right.
right? You know, it provides more weight if that comes from me. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
it depends on like what we discovered, and again, like, bringing some of that stuff up, not just on an individual basis, but like in an all hands meeting, right?
Right.
Or, hey, we've noticed
Right.
there's this trend going on,
Yeah.
right? And that's pretty powerful in getting everybody aligned with, oh, I need to be more careful about this,
Right.
right?
Yeah. And do you share because one of the things that Teramind is really great is we have screen recordings, we have, that visual timeline or screenshots. And do you kind of share some of that? Obviously anonymized, do you share like an example in a security incident? I'm sure you do, or you have those like, investigations. But when you're talking about productivity, be like, hey, employee A had his screen like this, and an employee B had it like this. Um, do you share those screenshots to kind of back
We
it up?
do. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, as long as we can anonymize it, like,
Yeah, 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 of course.
we can do that. All right. So yeah, blurring somebody's, the patient information or blurring the person's identification for some of those. Yeah, absolutely. That's
Yeah,
been really helpful. Because we're visual creatures, right? So, seeing the differences can really help. Um, I wouldn't say we share a lot of screen recordings,
right.
full recordings, but definitely screenshots have helped.
Yeah. Um, with with regards to like some high risk situations, right? Is there different access to AI tools that you are enabling for different members of different teams, right? You know, obviously every organization has different departments. Are there certain limitations that you're putting on different departments?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, the the engineering team is the classic one. We probably have more access to more AI tools just because there's a lot of momentum in
Hmm.
changing that portion of the industry. Versus the sales department. Like, definitely want them to use AI tools, but probably in a more limited fashion, right?
Hmm.
They don't need to have all five different models at once, right? Where the dev team might want to play around because of the code generation tools to with a
Right.
few different models, right? It's also, what are you sharing in those models?
Yeah.
Right? That's what a lot of it boils down to. You don't want your sales team giving away all the company secrets and what you're about to do next to just any model. So, which models are available to help them clean up their wording or etc. without putting that company exposure? Because
Yeah.
again, like, we don't have contracts with every company out there that's doing AI. How
Right.
could we?
Right.
Right?
So did you guys land on a specific tool, like say like you mentioned for the sales team? Is there a tool that you landed on based on what you were seeing people use, or kind of you guys led that direction?
Uh, I would say it's a combination,
Hmm.
right? We're a Google shop, right?
Right.
So, we already have the proper controls and BAAs in place with the Google. So that's an easy one to kind of reinforce. But it's also like, I don't want to restrict people if there's something that's specific that they need that's going to help them do their job the best they can,
Right. But you
right?
guys are so focused on productivity, which is great. So like if you can enable it for them, that'd be fantastic.
Correct. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's usually, an observation and a conversation. Like, we prefer you to use this for now, but if you have a better tool that's going to help you accelerate, then we want to have that conversation.
Right.
But then we also want to make sure we're, protecting the data that we need, right? And that's the conversation, right? The
Yeah.
the proliferation of AI tools really is the next major shadow IT that's out there,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so,
Of course.
how do you account for that,
Right.
right? If
Especially
you
with,
don't,
like we talked about, right? It's being built into everything nowadays.
it is,
Yeah.
right? And like, the terms of services of a lot of companies are changing because they're starting to introduce AI
Right.
in the background or in their applications itself. So how do you keep on top of that?
Yeah.
It's really difficult, right?
Yeah.
But it starts with, like, okay, what again, kind of back to the data governance. What data are we sharing, and are we okay with that being out there,
Right.
right? Do we trust this company to not share the data that we're using with them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of it comes back down to trust. It's not just do I trust you? It's like, do we have it contractual? Is it the terms of service? Are you training? It's all the legalese that ends up
Right.
getting coming into play. But it really starts with, and it boils down to do we trust that, this is the right partner for this activity, for
Yeah.
this data?
So, the next question, I might put you on the spot a little bit, right? We talked about how you guys are really great at communicating and, trying to increase awareness and getting all these touch points. Have you ever caught any data leaks or, sensitive data information getting put into the wrong places? And kind of like, what did that look like and how did you guys handle it?
Yeah, I probably can't talk to any too much
Yeah, of course.
specificity, but what I would share is, um, because we're a Google shop, we've got
Yeah.
Google Drive, and
Mm,
we've got a standard policy that all data needs to reside in Google Drive because that's our company standard, right? Meanwhile, we do know people download stuff locally because it's more efficient, more productive, right?
right.
So yes, we have had instances where people have done that. Okay, probably not the biggest problem to have, but because it's against our policy, we do need to follow up on that.
Right.
So, right, it's more of, okay, what data did you download? Why did you do this? And can you do this in a different manner? Right.
Right.
So, recognizing those things and understanding that is the first step.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
You
it,
know, Fortunately, knock on wood, we haven't had a data leak like
no,
that.
that's great. No, and again, like, with Teramind, just to kind of like get a little bit into that a little bit more, right? So with Teramind, you're on the endpoint. It's not just like up the browser. So it's not just seeing what's happening in their particular, window. It's happening whatever's on the computer. So you're able to see if they downloaded something or what they did with it, even to that
Yes.
extent. So it goes a little bit beyond that browser experience. Um,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
what I totally agree with you. And what I appreciate about Teramind is how we can set up automatic triggers for different behaviors, right?
right,
Because again, 200 employees, we can't monitor all of them all the time, nor would we want to, right? That would
right,
be insanity. But what we would like is like the ability to be alerted when there's something suspicious so we can further investigate it,
right.
right? And that's exactly what Teramind provides.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, you sometimes have to play around with, how
the
the
controls and
variables and the controls
yeah,
are
of
what you're
course.
looking for, of course, but it's a really powerful tool for enabling that. Um, One interesting use case that I haven't mentioned that you and I did talk about when it comes to AI and tools out there is we were holding a phishing test, right?
Hmm.
And noticed a spike in AI usage during that test. And what we discovered was actually an interesting thing where people were like getting these emails that they thought were suspicious, taking the contents and putting them into an AI tool to say, is this legit? Right. And I thought it was just a really fascinating use case that kind of,
Right,
I don't know why the employees all starting to do that, but they kind of, collective mind started doing that to discover like, what's going on here.
right.
And I thought it was a great use of AI as well as the tools that they have available to understand like what's happening.
Yeah.
And our phishing failure rate actually went down that cycle because of that. It was really fascinating. So again, like kind of
Yeah,
talking to the employees about that afterwards, it's like hey, great, our scores are going in the right direction. More people are aware. Here's some of what your peers are doing to understand if this is a legitimate email or not.
that's a great example. I mean, and if more people took that, even just in their personal lives, right? Questioned
Yeah.
and used the tools that they had at their disposal. I mean, again, I get texts from my mother-in-law every once in a while. Hey, is this a legit thing? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a great example. And I wanted to expand this a little bit outside of healthcare and maybe outside of financial services or what from your experience is most transferable to not just the regulated industries, but like overall as the other industries or smaller businesses. You guys mentioned that TimeDoc is a smaller company than JP Morgan, and just how have how can you share some of that experience with other industries?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. You know, again, coming back to like the commonalities between industries, like every industry deals with data in some fashion or another,
Yeah,
right? So what data do you need to secure and keep within the company versus what are you going to use in a broader sense? I'll just put it that way, right?
yeah,
And you know, again, like, when I was at JPMC, like they had processes for so many things, which was great, right? Large financial institution, you would expect that. Um, Learning from that experience and bringing it to a smaller company, I think was really important to establish. And that's that that blends any industry. Like,
right,
what patterns are you establishing to make sure that the trust you've built with your customers is going to remain there,
right,
right? Because what they say about breaches and data leaks, it's a matter of if, not when, or
right.
it's a matter of when, not if, right? Right? It's just a matter of time. It's going to happen,
Yeah.
right? And obviously, certain industries are higher targets for that than
Hmm.
others, but we're all targets because it's people data, right?
Well,
The more data you have on a person, the more you can scam them, right? The more you can try to extract something from them that you want, right? There's a lot of data out there about people. So I mean, that's really the commonality.
I would say it's there's both. I mean, I get there are bad actors everywhere, and there's many bad actors, and I think AI has made it easier for bad actors to kind of get to people's information, and the way I've always looked at it from a security standpoint is you want to aspire to operate the same way and at the same levels that some of these regulated industries do, because they have the most sensitive data, and if they are doing something, obviously it has to make sense for you and your availability, your performance, and your resources available to you. But that's what you want to strive to, right? And especially small businesses or medium mid-market companies, they'll want to kind of learn from those applications and say, what's the best case? What's the best practices here? How can I best apply some of this stuff? And probably because in other areas, right, they have employees that might not be as regulated, right? Or
No,
as watched upon, they might be more susceptible to whatever. So there's kind of that balance where, yes, the keys to, the treasure chest at, a financial institution is much greater, but you can easily get the safe at, the 7-Eleven for example, right?
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you actually shared an article with me that I found pretty
Yeah.
fascinating. It was from, I believe,
Hmm.
Verizon does an annual
Report.
cybersecurity report,
Yeah.
right? And one of their statements in there was like 60% of breaches involved a human doing something
Right.
wrong, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily malicious, like just a
Exactly.
human doing something wrong, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I don't know, all companies that I'm aware of have humans involved in some fashion or another, right? And so, yeah, it comes back to like how knowledgeable are they around these
Exactly.
areas, and like what controls can you put in place to help them help themselves so they
Right.
don't become the latest phishing scam or the latest ransomware
Exactly.
attack, right?
Right.
It that's again, it comes back to the data and the protection of the data, and then the trust, right?
Right.
Do you trust this company and trust the people in the company to protect the customer data?
Exactly. So, again, leaning from your experience, if you were advising a company that is just starting to explore workforce intelligence, a solution like Teramind, for example, right? What would you tell them to focus on first?
I'd honestly say, do something similar that we did. Don't focus on finding the bad actors.
Hmm.
Focus on like if you have this increased observation for your workforce, what's the good that can come out of that? Like, what
Hmm.
are the positive things that you can do to change behavior and help your employee base, right? Because that was really a positive tilt for this. Because
Yeah.
again, like yeah, we all know we work for a company. They're monitoring our platforms. They're monitoring our systems for the right reasons. But what else? What are the positive things that can come out of that? So it's not
Right.
always just a hammer to your toes. It's a a lifting up of the employee. Because
Right.
I fashion the bad actors are very few,
Right.
right? That 60% of humans that have done something wrong, they didn't think they were doing anything wrong,
Exactly.
right? They just
Yeah.
didn't know, or they weren't trained, or they made a mistake, right? Those are all human traits.
Even more so, right? Like you gave the example of someone downloading the data to their local thing because it's more productive. They're actually trying to do the right thing, right? They're trying to be more productive.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So like, how can you enable your workforce by having this observation tool,
Right.
right? Right. Because yeah, we already tilt negative as a society, right?
Right.
Finding the negative in things is probably the easier route than finding the positive. That's why I like over-index on the positive. Like,
Right.
what can you get out of a tool like this that shows you that people are doing good things?
Right.
Because
I
they
thought you
are.
were say tilting negative as like as IT as like an IT department who's always saying, no, you can't do this, no, can't do that. So I'm glad you included everybody.
Yes.
But
Yes.
yeah, no, and I think like you're saying is that from a security standpoint or from an IT standpoint, if you can show the value of a tool that you're bringing in that is broader than just protecting the organization, you know, and again, that's one of the things that's Teramind is we are not just a productivity tool, we're not just a security tool, we're not just a compliance tool or a process optimization tool. We're all of these in one. You know, we are a data analytics platform, and we're applying the analytics to all these different, things and areas. And what you can do with this tool, right, is so amazing. And again, it's going to scare people that we have 650,000 touch points for across, an endpoint. But transparency, you lead with that, and you lead with the positive aspects of it, and then people will say, okay, I'm not going to be so skeptical about it, right? HR leaders are, might say, hey, there's too much, invasive, invasion of privacy with this tool, but is it? We're also trying to say, hey, look at the benefits, and again, that's what's great about hearing it from you because I can say it as much as I want, but hearing it from you as a customer that it helps get that message out there. And so I really appreciate that.
Of course. And we should all keep in mind that, it's a work computer for work,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like what is the old adage like, don't send an email or an IM that you wouldn't want published on, as a headline,
Right. Yeah.
right? Because,
Yeah.
especially certain industries, you're auditable.
Right.
Every communication can go through an audit if that needs to be. So
Yeah.
like, if you're ever questioning like, should I do this on my work computer? Probably shouldn't.
Yeah. Um, so I think I have one last question before we get to the audience questions. And this is more of like looking ahead, right? How do you see the role of, a solution like Terramind evolving as AI becomes more embedded in everyday work, right? We talk about how tools are everything is adding AI. How do you see Terramind making, evolving a little bit and making that work better?
Yeah, well, I don't want to predict your roadmap, but um, because you have so many touch points and you have an
Yeah,
understanding of what's happening, like again, we kind of over-index on productivity. Like, how can Teramind help us with productivity using the AI with all the data that you have? I
yeah,
imagine you can do that pretty well, right? Because you
yeah.
have
Oh,
more
yeah.
insights on what's going on than anybody else,
Right.
right? I also think, systems are going to be getting faster and more real time with
Hmm.
that kind of feedback. You're already seeing it in the AI summaries for meetings. Like I can ask a question back to the transcript as the meeting's happening.
Right.
That's it's really powerful. So couple that with what you all are capturing and viewing of what's happening. How can you help guide um, clients, right?
Yeah.
How can you help ensure that hey, are you sure you want to download that file
Right.
locally, right? Not that you want to stop them, but
Right.
just maybe a pop-up and a reminder. Like, we didn't talk about this earlier, but like, you have the ability now to pop up a window on the screen
Hmm.
based on a trigger of an activity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I haven't used that a lot, but I've used it some with like, hey, it's during the day and you're opening Netflix.
Right.
Like this is a work computer. You sure you want to do that?
Right.
Again, I haven't done that, haven't seen that happen, but like, it's crossed my mind more than once that capability is there, right?
Yeah.
So again, I see, workforce intelligence, like just use those two words together. Like
Right.
you should be
Exactly.
helping the workforce become more intelligent by helping guide them like more
Yeah.
real time, and you're going to have that information.
Yeah. And you did touch upon something that, we're very excited about, and on our roadmap, and we're actually, next week in like 10 days, we have AWS reInvent that we're going to be at, and we're going to debut a new tool, and we're really excited about it. And without getting too specific, you touched upon that conversational aspect with the AI summary with, in real time.
Yeah.
So I think that might be a part of it, right? Of, where, how workforce intelligence can become more conversational between you or other privileged access users, or where, the the data isn't going to necessarily just only reside in the platform. It's going to reside in your regular workflow. Um, so, stay tuned for the announcement in about 10 days. We're really excited about it, and we really hope that, we know it'll change things, but we want to make sure that it has, the great impact uh, for workforce intelligence. So I'm going to take a look and see what kind of questions we came up in our chat here. Um, we have a couple of questions. The first one is from Arson. How do you see the future of AI regarding contextual value? Specifically, how will AI evolve to understand business and individual user context the same way a human would?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
I really think like most AI tools are still a bit context blind,
Hmm.
right? In today's day and age, like, you know, MCP is really powerful when it comes to providing additional context for, I'm sorry, putting my engineering and technology hat on, like, in writing code, the more context you can give the AI, the better code it's going to write for
Right.
you, right?
And the same
So
way with prompts, right?
like
The,
your
the more
table
it's,
structures, right? It's just
yeah.
additional information, right? Right now, like going back to the AI summary example for a meeting, the AI only knows about that one meeting, right?
Exactly.
It's only going from the context that you provided it in that. So I do see a future where it gets more memory. Like we're already starting to see that. Like, Chat GPT, can recall certain memories, like if you
Hmm.
allow it, right?
Right.
So I do feel like that's going to be a more important evolution as we go along, because right now it really only knows general knowledge and what you
Right.
provided within in the small context window,
Right.
right?
Yeah. I think that's, I mean, especially, when you're using it, or I'm using it for productivity wise, right? The more defined I can give my prompt, the better results you're going to get.
That's right.
And the more resources you provide, either you just for saved memory, or in that particular request, the more you're going to get back, right? So the
Right.
more you give, the more you get.
Well, and
Um,
that's where you're seeing the innovation right now.
yeah,
Like, MCP, model context protocol. That I mean, it's still relatively new, right, from an industry standard. but it's
Yeah.
becoming more and more prevalent, where more companies are starting to create MCP servers to provide
Hmm.
more context to whatever they're
Right.
trying to do.
Um, Thank you. Arson, I hope that answered your question. We have another question from Blake. Um, Nick, what is one change or initiative you're looking forward to implementing in 2026 based on what you're seeing in Teramind?
Yeah, so one of the recent discoveries we've had is kind of going back to the tooling conversation,
Hmm.
right? So what we've noticed is um, certain tools that some of our care coordinators are starting to use to solve problems. So, Teramind is kind of opening our eyes to what those problems are.
Hmm.
And that's going to allow us to then look at our roadmap of like, okay, how do we best solve those problems, right? Again, it can be as simple as, grammar, right? I'm trying to improve the grammar on this. A lot of what we do is like patient notes back to their provider,
Right.
right? We want to make sure that one, that all of that information is secure, right? But two, also a note worthy of providing to the provider that gives
Yeah,
them full context of the
exactly.
care that we're providing, right?
Right.
So, Teramind is helping us identify those use cases across our company to be able to go after the right tools.
Amazing. Um, I don't see any more questions in the chat. So, we can close it out here and just, put a nice bow on it. Nick, do you have anything, last things you want to add? Uh,
Yeah,
Please.
I mean, one, yeah, thank you for this opportunity. Really greatly appreciate it. Yehuda and Teramind overall. Thank you. The landscape's evolving very quickly. Like, Teramind is a great tool for understanding what your workforce is doing and how they're operating. But keep looking at the positives of what they're doing. How can we best use that to improve what they're doing instead of using it as a punishment?
Yeah.
Um, the other aspect is um, AI still has flaws, right?
Yeah.
And, we're all using more and more AI, but by God, let's keep the human in the loop because
Hmm.
we're going to be able to, catch those things, and ultimately, we're the ones responsible for the output, however we're using it.
There is that little warning at the end, right? That always says every,
Yep.
it's imperfect. There can be a problem. Please check the work. And that's also part of that trust thing is where you're eventually you want to get to the point where you can trust it 100%. We can't yet, right?
No,
Even just the simple things. I remember recently typing in something and saying, please cap this at 200, your response at 200 words. And it's like, okay, here you go. And it was 600 words. I said, well, no, this is too much. The simple word counting. Um, but yeah, and I had to do it several more times before it finally put it under 200 words. But um,
they're not perfect systems, but this is the worst they'll ever be. So they're just
yeah.
getting better. But yeah, it's just like any tool. We're gonna end up trusting them more and more and more
Hmm.
until like, yeah, we stop validating their output.
Right.
Let's don't do that yet. Like we
Yeah,
can't do that,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that you said there that this is the worst it'll ever be every day going forward. That yesterday was the worst it'll ever be, and that's really something great to kind of keep an eye on and keep a thought in your head. So thanks so much, Nick, for joining us today. We'll obviously keep in communication and share all these exciting things that we have coming out with Terramind. But again, thanks so much for joining. Thanks everyone for coming. If you guys want to see a demo of Terramind, come to our website. We have a live environment that you can test out. We have a free trial, and you can reach out to one of our team members and get a custom demo yourself. So thanks so much, everyone, and have a great day. And happy Thanksgiving, early one.
Thanks,
Take
y'all.
care. Thank you.